And welcome back. This is your man Warrior, and this is another patron roster review. This is the first roster review post Commander Luke coming into the game. So if you're watching these, a lot of these are from the past that I'm releasing, that I've done 2 or 3 weeks out. This one's actually past Commander Luke being released. So when you see this, you'll get to experience what my thoughts are now that everything in the meta is changing and has changed. This is good old Jimmy, or Joel Immy, from Stevo's Falcons, and he's been a patron for a few months. What an awesome dude. He asked about arena only. I didn't ask about ships, but I'm going to give him my 2 cents on ships because even though he's free to play, the fleet rank of around 1,000 can be improved for sure. It's just he had taken a break in the game, so that leads me to what he is. He's free to play. I think he has spent like 20 bucks or something, but I'm not going to call that a whale or a dolphin or anything. He is free to play for the most part. He's played for a very long time, over a year and a half, but he did take a few months break during ships when it was launched and the hat raid, and unfortunately he came back to finding out that he's way behind on ships. So that's kind of why he's given up a little bit on ships and just puts in the effort that he has to, and why he's at where he's at. But he is still plugging along in ships and doing all right. So he asked about arena and hat, and we're going to go ahead and go into those. Now, the first thing with arena is, because he's free to play, he doesn't have a whole lot of characters developed, and that happens. You have to really be sold out for a particular team. And so here's all of his characters, and you can see in his 3rd row, he's down to like gear 8 characters, and then it just goes down from there, you know, gear 6, gear 7, gear 8. And so he's trying really hard. He has some good characters like Thrawn that he's trying to develop, Shore Trooper that he's trying to develop, Darth Nihilus, Han Solo, you know, the Luke Skywalker that just got released. There he is, right in the middle, right. So here's Commander Luke. He did get him to 7 stars, so he had the right characters for that, and he's got all of his abilities maxed out but the Zetas, so he's just got to gear him up. He's currently at gear 8. We're going to go through his arena really quick. He is really put all of his eggs in one basket, and the majority of all of his gear has gone into putting the resistance to gear 11. I will say this is probably the singular wisest thing I have ever seen in a roster review for free-to-play. He was very smart. He's done enough to get Emperor Palpatine with Rebels, but he didn't overplay his Rebels. He did enough to get R2-D2 to 7 stars with Empire, but he didn't overplay his Empire, and he put all of his eggs mostly in the Resistance basket. I mean, look at Finn is 11, Resistance Troopers 11, Rey and Poe are both gear 10, and R2-D2's 11. So that's where all of his energy has really gone over the last 6 months, and with 1 Zeta needed only, with Finn needing the Zeta for the heroic AAT raid and for, you know, Galactic War and whatnot. What happens is he has basically ensured himself that he'll get to complete Galactic War every day and relatively easily. B, he knows he's going to be able to do 3 to 7 million in the heroic AAT raid now because of this team, and he knows that he can compete offensively in arena. Now, the downside to his team, there is one downside, is their arena defensibility, meaning that when you're sitting and you go to bed, you wake up, you drop quite a bit, and that's because on defense they're not as strong as you would want them to be. Now, the one character I would place onto your Resistance team if you decide to keep this team is I would take Resistance Trooper out and put in General Kenobi. Now you're thinking, I don't have General Kenobi, how can I do that? You can't, not yet. So you're going to have to keep this in mind if you continue to run, because what you lack in this team is really a strong defensible tank. The critical hit immunity as well will help keep these slightly squishier characters from dying quite as fast. Of course, Finn, Poe already have disruptive taunts, which are great, and they speed each other up. And Rey hits like a tank, and she has foresight, and of course R2-D2 can work well. But R2-D2 with General Kenobi really make any team viable defensively, makes it much harder to fall and lose the rank that you've earned. So that would be my suggestion. If you want to try a different team in Arena, let me give you my thoughts on what you have. Now keep in mind, my suggestions have to be based on what you have, and I have to go off of your your highest leveled characters if possible, due to the fact that this is arena and you don't want to drop and you already have some pretty high resistance characters. So the first thought is you do have Rex at gear 11 and maxed out. Of course, we know that Rex has been and will continue to be meta. He is, you know, in the top 50, in the top 20, in the top 10 still. He's a phenomenal lead, and he's actually going to be a counter to the Commander Luke Skywalker that just came into the game. So until you get your Commander Luke Skywalker higher or other rebels higher, you could always place him in since you already have him at gear 11. The next I would put on this team is none other than Darth Nihilus. Now, Darth Nihilus, he does give you the insta-kill, the cooldown increases. You have him relatively maxed. I mean, you don't have his Zetas, but that's okay. You don't have to have him. And you do have him at 4-star gear 10, and I would say that does make him viable. If you look, he still has over 50,000 health and protection combined, even at only 4 stars. So that makes him definitely tankier. And so I would suggest remodding him slightly. You don't need all of that additional potency because his cooldown increase does not go through a potency tenacity check, and you could probably put more protection and speed on him. You definitely want Darth Nihilus faster if possible. I know it's hard for free to play with mods, but if you have some additional speed mods you can put on him, that would be the way to go. The faster he works, I mean, every character, the faster they are, the more turns they'll take in an arena battle. The next I would add in here is a similar situation. He's 4 stars and he is gear 10, and so but he is a tank, so he's viable at 4 stars gear 10, and you have him almost completely maxed out abilities wise, which is the most important. And he's going to not only create critical hit immunity for your team, but he's also going to have an auto taunt to take the heat off of your team, and he's going to be able to heal individuals on your team. So I would definitely recommend Shore Trooper as an auto-taunting tank. The next individual I would suggest is Kylo Ren. Even without his Zeta, he is an offensive monster. If you're looking for some good DPS, meaning damage per second, to be able to hammer out some characters, Kylo Ren is definitely the way to go. He's going to be a very high DPS character, and with Darth Nihilus insta-killing individuals, he's only going to have to take care of a couple of the opposing characters on the other team. Lastly, with what you have, I would suggest either Rey or Jedi Knight Anakin, both of which are 7 stars and are gear 10. Both are going to do a lot of damage. Rey does more damage but is squishier. Jedi Knight Anakin is not as squishy. He definitely can help with buff immunity, health immunity. He has a great AoE. He's kind of a great offensive Royal Guard, in the sense that Royal Guard taunts when someone gets under health. He is going to get extra attacks when they get under health or die, and he's gonna do more damage with that as well. So a Rex lead, Darth Nihilus, Shore, Kylo Ren, and Jedi Knight Anakin are about as good as I could put with what you currently have. It's just hard because it's free to play. Your gear level drops off really fast. Most things are gear 7, 8, or 9, and those are just not going to be viable for the arena. But Rex, Darth Nihilus, Shore, Kylo, and Jedi Knight Anakin are all geared up and starred up enough that they should be viable. I do not know how your shard is, so I don't know, but your resistance team seems to get you into the top 100 every day, and for free to play, that is pretty good. Now let's move really quick on to ships. You're using a Tarkin lead, and that's fine. You're using the TIE Advanced, and that's great. You're also using one of the TIE Fighters and Biggs, that's great. I would take your Ahsoka ship and your Wedge ship, put them in the back up, have Sunfac as your first backup, have Ahsoka as your second backup, and have Wedge as your third backup. And then for this, I would replace those two in your primary lineup with Umbaran Starfighter and the other TIE Fighter. You're using TIE Advanced and the Imperial TIE Fighter, and so you're going to get a lot of target lock, which is going to really bring out the ability to dispel on his basic with the Umbaran, and the other TIE Fighter is going to use his special every single round, pretty much, as long as everyone has target lock on him. You're going to cut through teams better than having Wedge, and you're going to have better dispelling than with Ahsoka, because he can do it, Umbaran can do it on his basic. So those are my thoughts in fleet. Just a little bit of a tweak, move 2 in the background, move 2 out of the back into the front, and I think you're going to find yourself climbing into the top 500 a little easier than you are right now. Now let's move into the phases of heroic AAT. I'm going to keep in mind every character you have, what you can pull to make a team, what you're capable of, and then what characters you probably should be focused on right now as your top priority. You have a heroic AAT team, so that's awesome. Let's get you some of those points. All right, for phase 1, just like I do with most people, because you're free to play and because of what you have in your inventory, I am going to say you should go Jedi. I would actually put Qui-Gon Jinn as a lead. I know you don't have him Zeta'd. You could down the road do that, and it's not a bad investment. I do not regret my Zeta on him, but he gives additional speed right now, and you want as much speed as possible, and with free to play, it's hard, and more speed equals more hits equal more damage. So I'd put Qui-Gon Jinn as your leader, and then I would use Jedi Knight Anakin and Ezra. They're your 2 highest, and they're both your 2 highest damage dealers. They're going to do all of the work. Jedi Knight Anakin can also do the buff immunity over General Grievous's head, which is going to help prevent those buffs. And then, of course, Ahsoka is your 3rd in line, and she gets the crit hit immunity and other stuff because of Jedi Knight Anakin, so it's a no-brainer to bring her in. Now, for your 5th, I actually wouldn't use any more of your Jedi. They're just not high enough. I would use your Commander Luke. You have his abilities basically maxed out, minus the Zetas. You have him 7 stars, so he can participate, and you haven't put mods on him yet, which will raise him up almost another 1,000 power. So all you really need to do for Commander Luke is gear him. He's at gear 8 right now, which is going to make him squishy. He's only going to have probably 30,000 health and protection. Pretty easy to kill, but he's your 7th. He'll do some good damage. He's very utilitarian, and eventually you'll be able to, solo the first phase with him alone. And you can use Commander Luke in the Rancor to solo. With, if you want to make sure you get through the Rancor, use Han Solo as well. Han Solo does so much DPS, and he does turn meter reduction on his basic. Commander Luke does turn meter reduction on his basic. So between the 2, they're just non-stop doing mass damage and reducing it. So for Rancor, I would do Commander Luke and Han Solo. Han Solo's at 6 stars, but you're going to get him to 7 stars soon because you're doing the heroic Rancor. You actually could leave them around gear 9 and still solo the heroic Rancor, but you do have to get their speed over 200 to really make sure that you're going fast enough that the Rancor doesn't take a turn. So that's the key with Rancor. Back to phase 1, I would put in Commander Luke as your 5th. I know he's not a Jedi, so he's not going to benefit from that speed increase with Qui-Gon Jinn, but he is a very viable character in that first phase. For phase 2, so no surprise here, the Resistance is where you've put the majority of your eggs in one basket. Great idea. You're going to fly through Galactic War. You can compete in Arena. You're going to be able to do the speed mods, which is going to help you in the long run to get speed mods for every character you own. And you've got the 5 best already leveled up, so excellent. I would definitely use them for phase 2. I'm sure you're doing that already. When you first start using them, you'll see yourself get like, 2 million, 3 million, 3.5, 4 million, and you'll start to kind of see that the more efficient you play them, the more efficient and higher scores that you will get, and you'll start to see the scores that you're seeing on YouTube videos. The faster you make them, and the higher gear level they get, and the higher their abilities are. Currently, you've got them almost completely maxed out, so you should be pulling in around 5 million with this one team, roughly 5 to 5.5 million pretty easily each time you do it. If not, you may want to watch some other videos from the YouTubers like McMull, who's got the strategy guides on how to use Resistance, so that way you can make sure you maximize that 5.5 million. There are people that get about 7 million, but they do have like God mods on their characters, and it's unrealistic to think that everybody is going to be able to do that. But with 5 million and acquiring another 1 to 2 million from the other 3 phases, you should be able to do 6 to 8 million relatively easy, 6 million pretty easily each and every time you do the HAAT, which should put you in the top 10 probably of the guild that you're currently in, which is awesome. For phase 3, so you don't have Tebow, you don't have Chief Sherpa yet, and you don't have Thrawn 7 stars. So all the really cool teams for Phase 3 are kind of out of reach at this moment for you, but that is okay. You can go ahead and do your Emperor Palpatine lead, and then you can use Death Trooper, Royal Guard, and Stormtrooper Han. Those are all 7 stars. Now, TIE Fighter Pilot should be in this team as well, and he's only 4 stars. So my suggestion is make your #1 priority right now for farming. We're talking about getting stars, not gearing. Gearing, you want to still gear up your Commander Luke and others, but for TIE Fighter Pilot should be your #1 farm out of Cantina. He should be the only one you're farming out of Cantina right now, and you should get him up to 7 stars. He is your damage dealer under Emperor Palpatine. He can take, 8 turns in a row. He does a lot of damage. That's like 200,000, damage that he'll lay down in each time that he gets to go. So it's just a lot of damage. You can do 400,000 to 600,000 pretty easily with this team. Obviously, Emperor Palpatine lead, and then TIE Fighter Pilot when he's ready. Your Death Trooper is just tankier, and he's going to be able to apply, it does work in the tank raid, onto the main robot. You can apply the death mark, and the way you want to do that is as you're shocking all the ad robots with Emperor Palpatine to try to get him extra turn meter as well. You're going to, before he gets to that point where he goes non-stop with his basic, you're going to want to apply death mark on the main guy, and then when he gets that 100% turn meter, Emperor Palpatine's going to do additional damage each time he hits. It is a bit tricky. You'll have to play with it to kind of pick it up, but he's definitely someone I would include on this team as Death Trooper. Royal Guard for speed down, and of course an auto-taunting tank. You've got to gear him up some more, or he's going to die pretty quick, just like your Stormtrooper Han. Now, let's move to Phase 4. Now remember, we have to consider what you have available to you as a free-to-play, and you do have some Rebels still available. Now we're using R2-D2 in Phase 2, we're using Ezra Bridger in Phase 1, and that leaves us, in Commander Luke is in Phase 1, so that really leaves us with not a lot of Rebels left, and most of your Rebels are just barely high enough to have unlocked Emperor Palpatine. So with that said, you are going to have to put a little bit of energy into your Rebels if you want to do more damage in Phase 4. To Phase 4, you can do a lot of damage, millions, 2 to 4 million with a good Rebel team, so you may want to consider doing that unless you decide to go the clones route, although clones are tedious, they're hard to gear, they're hard to get, a few of them, and their abilities, there's like 120 Omegas pieces that you're going to need just for the clones alone. So really kind of crazy how many you're going to need, and then multiple Zetas and stuff. With the Rebels, you don't actually need any Zetas, so that is an excellent option. I would do for Rebels a Wedge lead, Biggs Darklighter behind him, of course. The duo combo would be great. Eventually, you'll have Chirrut Imwe to 7 stars, and you'll have Han Solo to 7 stars, and so I would recommend those two when they get to 7 stars. But in the meantime, you can put in your Lando, he's gear 10. You can put in Jyn Erso, she's gear 8, and she can bring Rebels back to life, so that will help if you lose one of your characters. You want to stick with Rebels, and you want to keep Wedge as the lead, so you get all the bonus turn meter and the health gain that you get in addition to the health steal that the characters already have. And then Princess Leia is gear 9, and she's been recently reworked and now works very well in Phase 4, whether you're using clones or Rebels, because she can really just keep herself stealth. She gets additional buffs, and she does a lot more damage now than she did previously. So those are the 4 phases. I've talked about Arena, I've talked about your ships arena. I know that you're not super stoked about ships, but do those 2 little switches like I suggested earlier. Continue with your resistance team in arena. I think you're going to be fine there, but if you wanted to switch it out to a Rex lead, Darth Nihilus, Shore Trooper Kylo, and Jedi Knight Anakin, I think that would work well. Continue to gear up your Luke, Commander Luke, because you will be able to bring him into arena once he's about gear 10, and he's going to be a monster for you, a total and complete powerhouse. And of course, those 2 phases of heroic AAT are, you're only going to get better and better. If you have any questions, you've got private access to me on Discord since you are a patron. Make sure you comment on there anytime you need help. I appreciate your supporting this channel, and for anyone watching, if you have any other suggestions for Jimmy that he maybe hasn't heard through this roster review, leave them in the comments down below. As always, keep your gaming on. Warrior out.